Bien,
Hello.
antes de comenzar, les voy a pasar el micrófono al que tenga preguntas. Tienen que hablar con el micrófono para que las personas que estén en vía Ustream puedan escuchar, aunque no se escuche aquí en el salón, ¿ok? Preguntas o comentarios.
El grupo tiene algunas preguntas. Yo le expliqué que tú podías traducir las preguntas de ellos, así es que you will have to try to translate their questions. I think some of them. So let's move the microphone to those persons that have questions.
Thank you for the presentation. I have a question because they use the word wired as for the brain. I would like to know if with these new technologies, there are studies that prove that something in our brain is changing or is different now from, I don't know if it's generation, the new kids are understanding different. That's one. And the other one is in terms of countries or zones that use more connections and blocks, if their education systems or economy is, I don't know, better than
better, yeah.
Okay. Yes, if there are studies about those areas.
Well, the first question relates to wired, the wired brain, and the messages are contradictory. Some people say yes, our brain is changing. Others say no, it's not. And I think that one of the questions in that is, the brain is it has always changed. It's this concept of brain plasticity. There's a researcher by the name of Paul Bacchiarita, and he's looked at brain plasticity and researched how it is that a person who suffers a stroke can actually rewire their brain, which, at least when he first started with this, researchers in the field thought he was nuts because it went against the grain of what they thought. But he's done interesting stuff. One of his is, for example, where he teaches people who are blind or blindfolded. He uses a device where they can see with their tongue. And I'll explain what I mean by that. Is he actually puts a camera mounted on their head, blindfolded, and he puts an electrode device directly on their tongue, and the input from the camera to their tongue to their brain helps them. They can actually see, not crystal clear, but sort of patterns and stuff like that. So his view is that it's not the eye that sees, it's the brain that sees. So our brain, when one area of the brain is damaged, it can take over, another part of the brain can take over functionality. And that's always been the case. So the real question is, has the plasticity of the brain itself changed? Not just because our brain is always changing. From each experience changes our brain somewhat. And the second question of has plasticity itself changed? I don't think there's a conclusive answer one way or the other for that we're somehow a different being than we were a generation ago. The second question about studies on the use of blogs and technology in a classroom, whether that impacts society economically or whatever. I'm not aware of any studies on that. I am aware of Portugal, which has the Migueles project, and what they've done is at an early age, and we'll know a decade down the road, I guess, whether it makes a difference, but at an early age, all students get computers in the classroom from kindergarten on. Everyone in the country gets a computer, the Magellan, and they're now trying to improve the content, the curriculum that's available, as well as the teaching skills to use with it. And so there's a few ways. Years down the road you could say, is there a higher level of creativity in Portugal? Are they producing more innovative technology products? Are they better participants in the knowledge society? Do they have more patents being produced per capita than other countries? Is there an increase in their overall, those are the kinds of questions you can ask down the road, but it's too recent, I think, to say whether blogs have improved economic activity. There was a study, I've seen a few on this on Facebook actually, that suggest whether one causes or the other or not is unclear, but that people who are active on Facebook actually have lower grades in school. Now that might be because they're bored in school, and so really their activity on Facebook is based on them being bored. It's not that their activity on Facebook produces lower grades. There's no indication of which causes what, or if there's even that link. So in a lot of cases, social media, if you agree with my session where I talked about the importance of idea collision and knowledge generation, then I would say yes, it should result, the free exchange of ideas should result in more innovation, which in theory should result in more economic activity. I'd be reluctant to tie that to one tool like blogs though.
We were also talking about
So, yeah.
we were also talking about the position of a teacher in a connected environment. And we were saying that the teacher doesn't have to teach the student, but have to make an environment that provides opportunities for connectivity. And I think that may be the problem with Facebook. If we don't make the connection so that the students begin to use these technologies for learning, then nothing is going to happen, even though they will be learning things that we don't know that they are learning.
Yeah.
They probably are not learning our content, but maybe they are learning other things.
Developing different skills.
How could I, as a teacher, make the connection, for those students to use this openness environment for their learning? And I think that's a challenge.
I agree, and there's not a clear answer to that either, because we know students use Facebook actively, but they're not using Facebook for education. And I'm not saying they ought to. That's the other thing. I mean, we may, just like when you think of it, when I went to school, you had, whether it was an arcade, or something, I had places that it's sometimes been called sort of the third places between, work and life. But I think if you apply it to a school system, it's a place where we can, we don't necessarily want to be doing educational things. But that's important too, because a lot of good researchers discover answers not while they're actually researching, but when they're going for a walk or sitting in a bathtub. I mean, that's where the connections that require time to form. So I guess the main point is I wouldn't be pushing too hard on using Facebook for education, but I would focus instead on the kinds of skills that they would need to develop in a networked world, and then try and bring that into the teaching process. But I don't use Facebook in my courses, but if students want to, I don't really care.
I don't use Facebook, but I could maybe make some example as a mother, not as an academic.
Yeah.
One of my childs, that he's not longer a baby, he has 22 years, he used internet a lot, and he listened to conference via YouTube. So he's searching, and he is developing his own personalized systems, even though those topics do not relate with their university work.
Yeah.
But he is learning.
Which is great.
And nobody is giving him a test for those things that he is learning.
Yeah. Well, when you think of it, most people probably don't give you a test either to do your work, right? I mean, the only time we really test is when they're students. We're learning all our lives, but we only test them during the student stage. We don't get tested in work. It's the quality of what we produce determines our value to an organization. But school system's odd that way. So you had a question?
Yes, I have two questions. After the discussion in the group and listening to what's really the concern on the classrooms with the students, and the possibility of the information they get is not accurate and it's not right, what did you recommend, for the first question, what do you recommend to the curriculum developers in regard to connectivity?
Well, I think it's worth emphasizing that information is accurate and inaccurate at various times. When I went to school, I was taught that Pluto was a planet. Now that's inaccurate information because experts decided it couldn't be a planet anymore. So, well, there goes that. So it's worth noting that information always has different degrees of accuracy and inaccuracy to that level. What's important is that we teach students the ability to determine inaccurate information and to recognize that it's that exchange with others that often helps to highlight it. People need to be critical thinkers. You can't just like with stuff I've talked about here, I mean, there needs to be critical discussion and challenges to those ideas. Acceptance shouldn't happen before critique.
Right, thank you. And for the second question, quickly, there's another concern about the responsibility of that information out there. Is a lot of information, again, could be right or wrong. And what will be your recommendation to the universities and the Department of Education, for example, about the openness?
The privacy?
No, openness.
Okay. Openness in terms of, my first advice would be make it open. Right, you know, the curriculum should all be open. If it's funded by the public, everything, every course, anything that the government funds, that the school and university system produces should be open. That's really just a no-brainer to me. there might be reasons why they don't want to do that, but again, that's just my perspective on it, because I think you need some openness to improve the quality of it and to share information. You look at how many K-12 teachers in the U.S. alone teach intro English or that teach biology. And each one of them are creating their own courses in their own school systems. I think that's something you created in a wiki. Anyone can copy the contents of a wiki and personalize it, but have one source that defines this is what the Biology Association views to be an appropriate resource. Create it together, and then individuals could grab it and share it however they wanted to personalize in their classes. But yeah, we'll talk a little bit more this afternoon about information and openness, but it is important that students have access to it and other educators have access to it. Yeah. Yeah. I agree. Yes.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks.